Hello and welcome to Envision, the show where we talk to successful entrepreneurs to find out what drives them, lessons they've learned from their business career, and thoughts on the Cape Fear region. I'm your host, Jonathan Rowe, and with us today is Chip Venters, serial entrepreneur and founder and CEO of Content Delivery Ads. Thanks for being here today, Chip.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start out. You've had a fascinating career. Let's talk about the word serial entrepreneur, because in academia we love words and definitions, but when you were younger, did you know you were going to be a serial entrepreneur?
I did not, but my father was an entrepreneur, so I grew up in a family like that where I just thought that that's how people lived. Yeah. And so right out of college, I just went straight after, starting a business, doing something that I loved, and that just ended up being the pattern of my life. Was just I would do a business, would work out, I'd sell it, do another business. And the next thing I knew, somebody in the academic world was calling me a serial entrepreneur.
Now, for a lot of it, because we have a lot of different audiences who watch this show, for our student audience, a lot of them are graduating and there's always a lot of pressure, whether it's family pressure or peer pressure. You're supposed to get a job and work for somebody else when you graduate. Now, you just said, just flowed out, your father's influence, you just went out and started businesses just like that. I mean, what? Well,
it was interesting. I got a radio, television, and motion pictures degree from Carolina. Mm-hmm. But I was also into ski racing in those days, so I immediately moved to Vail, Colorado to ski race. And as a result of being there, though, I discovered an opportunity to start shooting ski racing. And so the next thing I knew, I had a company that did that. And that was, again, sort of an offshoot of what I was naturally pursuing. And when I look back over everything I've done, it's always been some sort of odd connection like that led to the next business that I did.
And how do you put all those things together? Again, I mean, it just, for a lot of us who sometimes struggle with, you see an opportunity, but how do you make it happen? I mean, you just say, ski racing, video, and then you had a company. I mean, there's some pieces that have to come together, whether it's people, cameras, equipment. How do you sort of take that opportunity you see, turn it into company, and then start growing it?
That is really a great question, because there was a change in the technology they used for video that happened right when I was there. In fact, the transition from film to video was at that moment. Mm. And I got injured, I couldn't race for a while, and knew about this new video technology that you could take on the mountain and actually spit out a finished product, in a day versus having to send the film off and all that. And I'm aging myself here, but so the combination of knowing about that equipment, knowing that these people could use it, and then the video equipment being available for the first time, I went and just raised some money with some local people, actually some rich Mexican people who were coming to Vail, who were some of the first to get VCRs and all that, and they said, gosh, yeah, we would love to shoot our families and all that, and so they provided the equipment to shoot their families, which then I was able to use to shoot the racing. So sort of a meeting of technology and opportunity kind of led to it.
And I mean, we're sort of maybe jumping ahead a little bit, but you've always been comfortable with all those dynamics in play. I mean, whether it's investors, the resources, the people you need, and the opportunity, and just running it all.
Well, you have to be, or you can't be a serial entrepreneur, because without a comfort level with all those elements, then you can't make it work. I mean, and everybody likes to talk about luck when it comes to entrepreneurship, and there's a ton of it, but you can't count on it. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at any aspect of what you're trying to do and hoping that luck plays in, then it's not going to work.
So that was your first venture, and then you have a subsequent venture after that, and I'm trying to go through my mind and some of the different ones you've been involved in. Which was the next one to?
Well, it's interesting. So then we get involved in the video. Then the next thing is, well, how's this video going to be displayed, and who's going to use it? And so we started a company also in Vail called Audiovisual Vail, where we rented audiovisual equipment, screens, and that kind of thing to people who are having meetings at the hotels. And so again, shooting it, then we led to the and then we were connected into the community at that point. Gerald Ford was the president, and he was hanging out in Vail, and a lot of focus was on the community, so we started a magazine, the Vail Entertainment Guide, because we just knew all the people. And so it was just sort of a set of opportunities that always presented themselves. And again, that just seems like the theme for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially me, because when I moved back to the East Coast, Raleigh, North Carolina. It was because Time Warner had hired me to shoot a documentary on the arts in North Carolina, which was just the result of another connection. And as a result of being there, I got into an ad agency. We started an ad agency, and then we took the concept of the audiovisual rental that we started in Vail, and we started audiovisual services in Raleigh, which is kind of everywhere now. So anyway, it was like they were all no-brainers is what it amounts to. In terms of what you were going to do next, it was no-brainers. It was always hard and challenging and all that, but it was no-brainers as to where you were going to go next.
And did you always, with some of these companies, the ones that maybe were acquired, you know, at least at this point in your career, when you started them, did you always have an eye towards whether it's the end game or, you know, the outcome and then the next one, or was it just you were along for the ride, it was a journey, and when an opportunity came up, whether it's to sell it or to step on to the next company, you just went with the flow? I mean,
Great question. One of the lessons I've learned is if you have a successful small business that's generating cash flow, especially if you're young, don't be tempted to sell it. Hold on to it. But see, I thought in those days, that's what you did. You did something, you got tired of it, you sold it, you moved on. And some of them, you know, you just wish you still had because they were really solid, sort of commodity style businesses. Now, I would say in the last 20 years of my career, I always have sort of an idea of where the thing is going to go from the standpoint of whether it's going to be acquired, whether it's going to be something that, you know, we want to last through retirement or whatever. But being in the technology business like I am now, it's incredibly Darwinian. You're competing against very, very large companies. They're brutal. They don't, you know, So I think that recognizing that you're in an eat or be eaten environment, many times you design the company and the products specifically to be acquired versus, and you hope, you know, you set it up in such a way that if it does want to exist on its own, it can, but you sort of know at the end of the day that it's probably going to be acquired.
Now let's sort of follow that conversation point where you're starting to get more now into technology, right? You're sort of blending, and a lot of them have sort of blended lines between video and digital and technology. And you start writing white papers around, I mean, social media and a lot of the things that, you know, media rights, all these different things that are now an everyday vocabulary. What did you start seeing in technology that was allowing you to have some of these visionary thoughts, which, you know, given your background, you're coming sort of from the media side. Again, it just seems like you just picked it up like anyone picks up a bike. Well,
I tell you, again, it was a sort of a no-brainer. I was sitting in a studio editing a show, and we were talking about the distribution deal and whether the distribution deal was going to work out. And somebody had told me about the internet. We were sitting there, and we were talking about the internet, and we said, wow, someday someone's going to be distributing video on the internet. And it was just like, whoa. And so at that moment, again, for better or for worse, I decided I was going to get out of the video side and go into the internet side because I had always, like any video producer, wanted to be in control of the distribution part too, which you can actually do.
Right.
So then that's when I got into software, and there was a company we started in Washington, D.C. In the mid-'90s called Deskgate Technologies, and we developed software for distributing and making money on the internet. And we're lucky enough to file a bunch of patents on those technologies, which are still in force today. And being so early to the game, we were able to get them. And so now some of the largest technology companies in the world are our licensees. At the same time, that it's still a major, major challenge because, you know, gosh, in the year 2000, we were already selling music and video on the internet. We thought, gosh, the old way of doing things was over. And still to this day, in 2011, it's being played out, as you well know. Yeah.
What, and I want to come back to that one in a bit. You know, sometimes it's hard in a 30-minute show when you're talking about so many steps and so many successes you've had, but you seem to move with a sense of urgency. You know, when you just made that comment, you know, in the mid-'90s, you sort of see this opportunity and where maybe the winds are blowing, and then you're there starting a company in D.C. Is it that sort of that quick in your mind, and what is it that sort of makes you, I don't know if urgency is the right word, but just you're there?
Well, yeah, it's an urgency that comes from just, you know, sort of curiosity. I mean, I think entrepreneurs have to be like pathologically curious. And I think that when you see something that is big and intriguing and it hits you that it really is something that's real, then many times you do have to stop and go in that direction. You can't sit around and wonder about it. Now, that also will lead you down some blind alleys and some rabbit trails, and so you have to be good at picking out the ideas that are going to be, because there's a million of them, especially these days.
Yeah.
A million of them, and so I think you get better at being realistic about which ones can work and which ones can't. But I do think if you see opportunity, you've got to move, because everything is changing so quickly, so quickly.
Does that mean you only look forward and not backward?
I think you look forward you look forward and you learn your lessons backwards, but you don't beat yourself up for them, because on any given day you're making the best decision you can. And if you've done your job of being super curious and doing all the research, and you make the decision, even if it's wrong, you did your best job. So you just keep looking ahead. It's like a shark moving through the water.
Do you, when you look back, and again, trying to encapsulate, what are some of the things that, you would say, okay, where you are today, you sort of mentioned that now you look at a much longer term vision of, where the company's going. What were some of those things that you picked up, at that point in your career from the past experiences that sort of brought you forward to where you are today?
Well, to me, there's a tremendous amount of logic and reason as to where things can go. In other words, and yet the old adage, history repeats itself. Well, especially when it comes to the internet, basically you're just getting a digital replication of the physical world that's always existed, albeit with middle people being cut out all along the way, with, again, disintermediation just happening everywhere. And so if you can see the unfolding of technology from a historical context and just take out the elements that are being destroyed, it's pretty easy to see the future. In fact, I like to kid with folks, this is the easiest time to see the future ever. Now, with that said, things like Twitter coming out of left field, I mean, who would ever thought a thing like Twitter would be big? And even the how pervasive Facebook is, that was kind of out of left field too. But for the most part, if you look at those elements, they sort of reproduced history in a way too. They've just sort of a digital manifestation of communication that we've always done.
And I want to come back to the future right at the end of the show so we can keep our viewers on the edge of their seats for the next 10 or 15 minutes. When you talk about sort of this manifestation of things in real life or physical transactions, brick and mortar used to be a popular term to now sort of online stores. What are you comfortable? A lot of people aren't comfortable with a lot of ambiguity or a lot of uncertainty or when things aren't linear. Are you comfortable with, because I think the internet's brought on a lot, it's brought on a lot of creative destruction, if you will. Are you comfortable and excited by the fact that things aren't linear and there's all these balls in motion, a lot of uncertainty? Do you exist well in those?
I think you have to. In fact, a book that had a major influence on my life was a crazy book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I don't know if you've heard of that book. Yeah. Which just tells you that the only thing you can count on in life is change. And then all I would add to Persig's book was the other thing you can count on is complexity. So change and complexity is what we're dealing with, and if you don't embrace them, then you're out of the game. Yeah. So I think you just have to be fascinated with change and complexity, and again, I said earlier, you have to be pathologically curious. If you're pathologically curious, it's easier to be okay with change and complexity. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
Is there a way, besides reading that book, is there a way to sort of teach dealing with change and complexity and being comfortable and taking advantage of it like you have?
It's the acceptance of the fact that most things you can't control, and the acceptance of the fact that everything is changing right under your feet. And so, again, it's not being too stressed out by that. It's just like, one of the famous or the best metaphors you can make in this town is surfing, right? It's to me, it's like surfing a wave. You don't have any control over the shape of the wave. You don't have any control over exactly what it's going to do when you get on it, but you prepare for it. You know as much as you can about it. You got your surfboard ready, the wax is done, you've prepared, and you get on it and you ride. And I think that the technology business these days is sort of a surfing metaphor. You've just got to ride and not be fearful. And the biggest thing is you got to drop in.
Yeah.
Just like that big wave, you know, if you don't drop in, you're not going to catch the wave. And I think that moment, that fear of dropping in is what you got to overcome.
Well, I want to stay on that for a moment because, again, we have a lot of sort of public officials and local public leaders who watch the show. Your Content Delivery Ads is based in Arizona.
Right.
Chip Ventures is based in Wilmington. Why are you, I mean, you grew up in Raleigh, but why did you pick here? And what do you see as somebody who does business outside this area, does it online, you know, that you can be anywhere, basically. Why do you choose to live here? And what do you think about this area in terms of entrepreneurship or education, or you pick?
We had family down here. I was in Washington, D.C. before we came here, and we just wanted a change. And the internet had come along, and so we felt like, gosh, this would be almost a living, breathing experiment as to whether you could you know, be here and things be other places. And we did move a software company that I was part of out of Massachusetts, a company called Sitescape. We opened an office here, right down at the beach. I think we were up to 14 or 15 employees here, and it was one of the first social media collaboration technologies. And we tried to make a go of it here, and we thought that as a visionaire out on the road, we thought, well, God, there's another software company here. So we made a go at it, and we discovered we could get good salespeople, but we couldn't get engineers to move here because engineers want a community of engineers and a community of companies to where if they don't like you, they can go across the street.
Right.
They don't have to move all the way back to Silicon Valley. So we discovered a lot of things that were good about being here and a lot of things that were bad about being here. But one thing you can say about the software business here is that if the conditions were sort of tailor-made or there was some incentives for software to be here, people would come. It's just getting sort of a critical mass. But you know, everyone loves the air, the water, the environment. Again, when you're in a green industry like software, it's easy to be critical of dirty industries.
Sure. Yeah.
But I worry the most about, you know, this area not incentivizing more green business and even flirting with the possibility of bringing in more dirty industry like cement plants and that sort of thing. I think it's like shooting the goose to lay the golden egg.
Well, and you sort of alluded to it. If you were put in charge of this region, you know, what are some of the things I think you've already alluded to about green industries or non-polluting industry? What are the things that you would want to see change here or improved, or what do you see as an opportunity for Wilmington if it wants to take advantage of it?
Well, you know, I think the growing credibility and just how great UNCW is viewed now nationwide. I mean, with the air and the water and the environment, you could do almost a little miniature Research Triangle Park.
Sure.
And by the way, if you ride around at Research Triangle Park, you don't see cement plants.
Right. Yeah.
You don't see oceans and estuaries and all that too. So, but I think that just the environment, the school becoming more of a centerpiece, and then incenting green industry to come here, just like they did with the movies. Even use the movie thing as a part of it. But I think that you could attract those kinds of industries with the proper focus. Easier said than done.
Yeah. Do you think this community wants to evolve, or do you think it's sort of complacent's not the right word, but do you think it's sort of happy with what it has? And you know,
I think that there's just a lot of confusion about what a green industry is, for one thing too. It's like immediately people think, oh, it's going to be a solar panel company. Or, you know, there's a lot of stuff like that. I just think people are wanting the area to have some sort of solid direction. I mean, I think the last recession, the over-reliance on real estate and development showed a weakness. I think that, you know, there now, because there might be just a touch of desperation to get the region going again, that there are people that would be willing to drop some environmental standards and all that and bring those kind of industries in. I think it's just a commitment and a certain level of confidence that, man, we got something here. Yeah. I was talking to one of the dive shops around here. You know, all three major scuba diving magazines worldwide rated this as one of the top areas to come see large animals, which is kind of, but it's because of the wreck diving. Yeah. But also, we have one of the #1 ratings for quality of the marine environment, all worldwide. Yeah. I mean, we're one of the last places where oysters are actually living. That needs to be maintained. We need to treat this area like we treat our own child. You know, let's cultivate that. It's unique. Let's don't screw it up. And people will discover it. That's what you promote. We have made that commitment that we're not going to let that go away.
I'm trying to figure out how to make the transition, but let's get back to some of the technology stuff. Because yeah, I think let's maybe make the jumping point. How can we as a region leverage technology? You know, your cutting edge technology stuff, content delivery ads, digital containers, you've got a lot of patents, you know, you're sort of seeing that future and where things are going. How important are regions, you know, in terms of taking advantage of technology to represent themselves outside the area?
I do think UNCW is it's like can be the hub of all this. And there is so much attention on the school now. It's just amazing. I mean, my son's been here 4 years. I can't believe how much has changed since he was a freshman here. So it's like everybody getting together and maybe get better at packaging. And, you know, everybody goes, oh, let's package the shoreline. You know, they're all fighting about, should we put Carolina Beach, it's going to be called the Cape Fear. Maybe there should be some packaging on this as a business region to do clean business. Yeah. And again, showing commitment. You know, if somebody says, oh, we're committed to clean business, we're committed to keeping the environment pristine here. Oh, but by the way, you're getting ready to put a cement plant in that's going to put out more mercury than, I mean, wait a minute. Are you really committed? What are you committed to? Right. I think commitment is a great word, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a business, whether you're a school, whether you're a region. We've got to show some commitment.
What's your commitment with digital containers and content delivery ads? Where do you see those companies going?
Well, we have some technology that's just now really coming into play. We have several years left on our current patent portfolio, and we've got some new patents we're going to file. We just want to stay relevant. We want to stay ahead of the curve. We've got a great foundation to build on, and we just need to keep moving ahead. Going back to the analogy of get up in the morning, know it's changing, knowing we got to change, and let drop in on the wave, stay up as long as we can, and hope that good things happen. And that's really, there's so little control you have over the technology business and where it's going, and especially when you've got, I mean, right now, it's almost a new version of the feudal age is broken out. You know, you got Google on one hilltop and all their serfs, you got Apple on another hilltop and all their knights and serfs, and they're all fighting to the death. And so the question is, where are you in that hierarchy? And are you roadkill? Are you, what we really want to do is we want to be, again, if you use the war metaphor, what we have are weapons in the war, and we'll take them to battle as a small company, but probably one of those larger companies can use them better than us. Yeah. So, our strategy is to just get better and better with our own weapons to where at some point in time when they eat us, the right guy will eat us is what it amounts to.
Now, it's interesting, and I don't know if this was by choice, but you didn't mention Microsoft, which, maybe 10, 15 years ago, there would have been a much bigger hill or mountain. Where are things going? I mean, and that's a very broad question, but, you've got, you've got a son at the university here, kids nowadays and students, Hulu and all the online stuff, and almost, I see voicemails almost becoming obsolete nowadays with how people communicate, especially younger people. Where is all this stuff going? I mean, it's still kind of messy. You mentioned Twitter and Facebook as just sort of replications of what already existed, but now in sort of an online version. What are some of the cutting edge things that, that you see now coming down the line down in the future?
Well, everybody gets so stressed out about their kids spending so much time on with the text and this and that and the other. But, research is showing that actually people are getting closer in interesting ways. Even the same technology that the parents are stressing over are making their families closer. I mean, they can check in with their kid during the day, which they never. Yeah. So I think that sort of mass level of connectivity is, is the question, is it good, is it bad? I mean, some scientists say that our brains are rewiring themselves right now. I don't know about that, but I don't see where too much communication is a bad thing. With that said, the question for a business person is, what are the business models that propel this? Because most of these services are still being provided for free. Yeah. One of the most sort of terrifying, and I will say beautifully terrifying from a business standpoint. One of the most beautifully terrifying things you've ever seen is Facebook's back end to their advertising system, to where if you're a business person, you can go and buy advertising that's targeted.
Yep.
Well, on Facebook, people tell you what they like. They tell you which movies they like, which music. They even tell their friends in messages that they just saw this, just saw that. Well, with Facebook's back end, you can go, and if I'm selling the movie Dr. Strangelove, for example, and I want to sell a Dr. Strangelove t-shirt to Everybody Loves Dr. Strangelove, I can put an ad on their page that goes right to them saying, you love, so all of a sudden you get, so the targeting of marketing to people is just, again, it depends on your point of view, is either terrifying or wonderfully terrifying. And I think, though, that that's not a bad thing either. You know, everybody goes, oh, I hate all this advertising. Well, you know, if you watch TV right now, half the ads are completely irrelevant to you, right? Well, if you'll notice on your Facebook page, almost every ad that pops up is totally relevant. It's spooky, but if you're going to be advertised to, especially in exchange for using a free service, why wouldn't you be getting relevant? So the relevance of the communication, the relevance of what marketers are saying to you is just going to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow to where, again, I don't know what that business model is, but.
Yeah. Well, and you know, as we're literally running out of time, which is much to my frustration here, let me just ask the one last question of the many I have is, with Facebook, what, you know, you look back at MySpace and some of the ones, I mean, they come and go in years now, and maybe that's going to accelerate. Is Facebook one of these things that's really going to be around for a while, or is there something coming down the line? So if you're a predictor of Facebook maybe going public at some point, if we have people who are saying, I want to invest, tell us the future of Facebook. Well,
there's been a lot of talk about Google being a monopoly, I say a natural monopoly. Now they're talking about Facebook being a natural monopoly. In other words, monopolies that just like spring forward like something out of nature. I would argue that Facebook's probably the only true natural monopoly. I mean, Google has still got to play with their algorithms, but Facebook now, everybody is aggregated in there, and their stuff's all in there. They're mostly happy. They're staying ahead of the curve on what people want to do to communicate. So I just can't see a mass migration from Facebook to some other platform. But it's probably happening right now, so that's big. But I do think Facebook is a game changer that we're all just beginning to understand. And anybody who's in our business, in the technology business, who's not thinking about Facebook as a development platform is again also they've got their head in the sand.
That's a very interesting point, and it's been a pleasure having you here, Chip, today. I think we're going to have to maybe have a part 2 to this to finish out some of the discussions.
I'd be glad to.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us again for Envision. We look forward to seeing you again next time.